Hello there. Have you ever heard about removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to reverse climate change? Turns out it's a real thing, and it appears that Bill Gates is very heavily invested in it. Whether you trust Bill Gates or not probably depends on your political affiliation, let's be honest. Or perhaps not even that, right? If you're a populist or not. Populist left wing would probably still be leery of allowing him to, well, control the climate of the planet, essentially, or at least affect it heavily. And if you're more into the establishment, then you might think that it's fine, you can trust him. After all, he's got the government's backing him. So, this is an article. Canada teams up with Bill Gates' Deep Sky project to remove Earth's atmosphere. Now, Deep Sky, I believe, is just getting money from Bill Gates, right? Canadian startup, awarded a US $40 million grant from Bill Gates' Climate Solutions Initiative, preparing to extract carbon directly from the atmosphere at its Alberta site by this spring. So it's a Montreal-based company called Deep Sky, and it announced on Wednesday that it secured funding from Breakthrough Energy Catalyst, a firm established by Gates to support its Deep Sky Alpha project. According to CEO Damien Steele, construction at a facility in Innisfail, just north of Calgary, is already in progress. This should be a proud moment for Canada, he says. This facility in April of 2025 will be one of the first full-stack facilities in North America to actually remove CO2 from the atmosphere using renewable power and store it underground in a deep saline aquifer, Steele said. So, essentially what we're talking about here is technology, or rather multiple different technologies, to siphon CO2 from the atmosphere. And basically this is an experiment to find out which ones work best, which ones are most cost efficient, and so on. Basically they're saying that here it is, quote, "The world will ultimately need many approaches to carbon removal at prices far lower than is achievable today, but Deep Sky's platform will enable and accelerate the kind of real-world innovation that could make affordable direct air capture achievable." That's what Mayo Fernandez, the head of Breakthrough Energy Catalyst, said in a statement. Like I said, they're basically doing an experiment trying to find out which approach is best for now. Direct air capture involves extracting carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere, a method distinct from capturing emissions at industrial sources like smokestacks. This approach targets historical emissions already present in the air, potentially reversing the effects of climate change. So, I talked with Grok about the Deep Sky project and siphoning CO2 from the atmosphere. And this is what it had to say. It was an interesting conversation. Not only for what it said, but for the way it's structured. So the first question was neutral. What is the Deep Sky project? And to siphon CO2 from the atmosphere. Basically, it's saying that the purpose is to remove carbon dioxide to address climate change by capturing CO2 directly from the atmosphere and storing it underground. Technology. Deep Sky employs direct air capture technologies where it's extracted from the air using various methods, including using fans to push the air over materials that absorb CO2, or through liquid solvents where CO2 is captured. Once captured, the CO2 is then stored permanently underground, either through mineralization into stable carbonate minerals or by injection into deep geological formations. Basically, that they're saying that they have multiple ways to store it as well as capture it, and it's done through a partnership with a collaboration with many different companies, like Carbfix for CO2 mineralization, Carbon Atlantis, Aquatic, and Mission Zero Technologies for different aspects of CO2 capture and storage. So they've established facilities like Deep Sky Labs in Alberta, Canada, to pilot up to 14 different such technologies and assess their scalability and efficiency. Funding and support. They got $40 million from Bill Gates. The funding supports the construction and operation of facilities. Yes. They're basically saying that environmental impact and commercialization. So already they're saying they get money from carbon credits, which is interesting. I didn't think that carbon credits were implemented to this extent yet. Now, as far as challenges, they're saying that it's the high energy requirements for this and the overall cost effectiveness and scalability of the technology. And that's pretty much all it says on the first question. So I asked, could there be adverse effects? They're saying, once again, the energy consumption. They're saying the safety of storage could be a problem. There are concerns the potential for CO2 to contaminate groundwater or cause seismic activity, although those risks are generally considered low with proper site selection and monitoring. Of course, there could also be leaks leading to the release of CO2 back into the atmosphere, or in extreme cases, causing geological instability. There's also the health and safety risks. That can pose risks to workers and nearby communities. There's a danger of exposure to high concentration of CO2, which can be hazardous. Additionally, the transportation of CO2 to storage sites could lead to accidents if not managed safely. So far, they are not really saying anything about long-term effects of this technology. They're just saying if it's not done properly, there could be accidents. They're also saying that there could be economic and social impact due to the financial investment required, and the socio-economic impact on local communities where facilities are built, including land usage changes, job creation or loss, and community disruption. Technological and scaling risks. They're saying that there could be unforeseen technological limitations or dramatically increasing costs. Air pollution might be a problem once again if there's a problem, and catastrophic release once again if you make mistakes. But nothing here is too bad, so long as you implement it properly and you use proper safeguards. So I asked, could the process affect Earth's climates or terraform the planet in a negative way? Because this is obviously the crux of the matter, right? Could there be long-term adverse effects for all of humanity if we do this, not if there are mistakes, but just by virtue of doing it? And this is where it gets interesting. I had to be very specific to get this information, apparently. They're saying the process of carbon dioxide removal through technologies like those employed by the Deep Sky project could indeed have implications for Earth's climate and potentially affect the planet in ways that might be considered negative or unintended. Here's an analysis based on available information. There could be temperature fluctuations. Removing significant amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere could lead to a decrease in global temperatures beyond what is currently modeled or desired. This is based on the current science that says that global warming is resulting from CO2 emissions. So obviously on YouTube I must say that this is a correct statement, but there are people who disagree with it, actual scientists and experts. Of course they're wrong, but if they were right, then this would not be a problem. I mean, the planet cooling down as a result of CO2 capture. The second thing is the alteration of the carbon cycle. Carbon cycle is a complex system involving the atmosphere, oceans, and biosphere. Large-scale permanent removal of CO2 could disrupt this balance, particularly if removal exceeds natural replenishment rates from sources like volcanic activity or biological processes. So essentially, there is naturally some amount of carbon being released and used, and if we siphon too much, then we disrupt this balance, and then things can go bad for the processes that use this carbon dioxide. Ocean chemistry. Carbon capture methods that involve ocean-based storage, like those potentially used by Deep Sky in partnership with companies like Aquatic, could alter ocean chemistry. While reducing ocean acidification is a goal, changes to in-ocean pH and CO2 levels could affect marine life, coral reefs, and the overall marine food web, which might also affect us if we eat anything that comes from the ocean, or if, for example, you have the vapors from the ocean coming down as rain later on as part of the natural cycle, then anything that might adversely affect the water in the ocean might also reach us. It says here feedback loops. Reducing CO2 might interact with other climate feedback loops. For example, less CO2 could lead to less plant growth in certain ecosystems if CO2 becomes the limiting factor, potentially reducing natural carbon sinks. So essentially, carbon dioxide is plant food. If we have less of it, then it could adversely affect plants in our environment, which of course we need. Now, potential negative terraforming aspect, biodiversity impact. A sudden shift in atmospheric CO2 concentrations could have unforeseen effects on plant species adapted to higher CO2 levels, potentially leading to changes in ecosystems, species survival rates, and biodiversity loss. Agriculture effect. There currently is a very big debate about farming, with the more climate alarmists left essentially cracking down on farming, especially by small scale individuals and companies, and basically trying to concentrate everything in the hands of a few large shareholders like Bill Gates, who I believe owns now more than half of the farmland in the entirety of the US. So there could be agricultural adverse effects, like agriculture relies on CO2 for photosynthesis. A significant drop in atmosphere CO2 might affect crop yields if not managed carefully, leading to food security issues unless agricultural practices adapt swiftly. Could something like that being done by the company funded by Bill Gates negatively affect his rivals in the farming market? I'm just pointing it out. It is possible. And of course, it might allow, monopolization of food production in the hands of Bill Gates and his contemporaries in large business. There's geoengineering risks. Large-scale CDR is a form of geoengineering, and like all geoengineering solutions, it carries the risk of unintended consequences. The Earth's climate system is highly interconnected, and altering one component can lead to cascading effects across the globe, potentially causing regional climate changes or extreme weather events, which literally is what they are saying they're trying to prevent. So interesting that their solution can lead to the very problem they claim to try to prevent. Ethical and governance challenges. The scale at which these technologies would need to operate to have a significant impact might lead to ethical debates about who controls the climate, how decisions are made, and the potential for geopolitical tensions if climate manipulation is perceived as benefiting some regions at the expense of others. So it's possible to use these technologies to affect some regions at the expense of others. Do you trust the government of Western societies right now and their allies in the corporate world to control the weather for you, to control the weather patterns, specifically if they can advantage or disadvantage communities as they see fit? Currently, the perception on the right is that these corporations and even our own governments are hostile to the native populations of the West, with very few exceptions like the incoming Trump administration. And so this distrust from right wing, which is basically half the people at this moment, if not more, could make this a very contentious issue in the future. If they cannot trust their own governments to have the best interests at heart, then they not only don't want them to engage in it, they also don't have any representatives to voice their concerns and fight for their interests as far as they are concerned from their perspective. So if you are a right-winger in the West today, I believe that this development should worry you, and you should probably think of how to how to put it, help create a movement or a representative group that will advance your interests, because it's going to be more than just CRT in schools or the usual left-wing stuff. If it comes down to managing the climate, this could affect everything about your life, including whether or not you have food to eat. Of course, they're saying that it could be mitigated. To avoid or minimize these adverse effects, rigorous research, modeling, and monitoring are essential. Do you trust the current scientific community, or do you feel as though they failed utterly in the last pandemic to properly vet the scientific results that were being presented to the public, to have a vigorous and free discourse, and to present the best science at the time to the masses? Do you feel as though they presented the science that the corporations and the government wanted to present? If so, well, then this is not a way to minimize or avoid it. It's only going to exacerbate the problem. And the second point is the Deep Sky project, along with similar initiatives, must engage in transparent dialogue with scientists, policymakers, local communities, and international bodies. to ensure that any potential negative impacts are understood, monitored, and mitigated. Once again, this is involving essentially the establishment, just like the previous point. It all depends on whether you trust the establishment or not. This is literally what politics, reality itself comes down to today. So, are you aware, were you already aware of what I'm talking about here? Is this the first time you heard about it? What do you think about it? Do you feel at ease? Are you worried about it? Do you think there's anything we can specifically do? Or is it just, once again, trying to create or support movements that advance our interests because the current ones do not? Let me know what you think. If you enjoy this or found it enlightening, please comment, subscribe, etc. And I'll see you next time.